Wolfenstein is without a doubt one of the most storied franchises in gaming history, and one that few people seem to discuss. From having been one of the very first first-person shooters, to having an entirely rebooted series for the modern era, stewarded by the folks over at Machine Games, this is a series that carries more weight than many people seem to want credit for, and the reboot that began at the beginning of the Xbox One and PS4 generation is still to this day one of my favorite series to go back to just for a stroll into an alternate history, with great amounts of camp, bombastic spectacles, a great shooter loop, and a surprisingly decent narrative for the most part. There's a lot to glean from here. While we wait for the inevitable Wolfenstein 3, let's take a look back at the 4 games in the rebooted run, see where they excel and where they fail. This is an end cap to the series we did way back in 2022, and one that I had a ton of fun making. For those of you new to the channel, welcome, and for those returning, long time no see. I had to take a break due to some turmoil that hit my life, but with time, these creative juices are starting to come back, and I have a good amount of stuff in store for you guys, starting with the continuation into our delve into Silent Hill, as well as some other off-the-wall stuff. I have a ton of footage stored up, so keep an eye out for all those videos coming soon, and if you enjoy this type of long-form retrospective content, consider subscribing to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now with all that out of the way, let's stop wasting any time and get right into it. First-person shooters in today's day and age is admittedly all about the multiplayer. From Halo to Call of Duty, Battlefield, and from other more milsim experiences like Squad, Arma 3, Ready or Not, all these games have a main focus in the multiplayer, whether cooperatively or against each other. But what happens if a studio makes a first-person shooter connecting to its roots and making a single-player only experience? In 2014, we got just that from Machine Games in the form of Wolfenstein: The New Order, a reboot to a franchise that brought us the first-person shooter decades ago. 8 years later, how does this game hold up? Is it still as awesome as it was to me upon release? This is the first that we're going to be doing in the Wolfenstein reboot series on this channel, so let's discuss why and if this game still is a great story-driven FPS. If you enjoy these long-form video essays about games, new and old, please consider hitting that subscription button down below. On that note, let's hop into Wolfenstein: The New Order. Let's go ahead and travel back into the Wayback Machine real quick to May 5th, 1992. From probably one of the most influential video game companies in our video game history, we got Wolfenstein 3D from id Software. This game was seminal in video game history and cemented the first-person shooter and bringing it to the mainstream arena, birthing one of the most popular genre of games today. With this type of pedigree, it's hard not to argue how important this game was upon everything we play today. Taking the camera and placing you in the eyes of the main character was something still relatively new at the time, and giving the players the ability to actually pull the trigger on your firearm at the bad guy was just straight up immersive. It still is, honestly. And looking back on this game, it's relatively simplistic in its art style, and working with DOS back in the day was not really a relatively artistic medium. Honestly, Wolfenstein 3D reminds me of that brick maze screensaver from Windows 95. But it's easy to see the influences this game has on games like Doom and Quake to come afterward. After its initial release, however, Wolfenstein as a series just kind of faded into obscurity. We got a bunch of okay shooters and even one Wolfenstein RPG, which I'm super curious about now in researching for this video. But in my opinion, I think it's safe to say that Wolfenstein never really had the prominent draw of games such as Doom and Quake 3 back in the day. And especially so in 2014 when Call of Duty and Battlefield were in the throes of its heyday of being the most popular games on the face of the planet. That was until The New Order. On a gameplay front, Machine Games was able to craft a shooter that was not only really good feeling to play, but also something that really touched with its nostalgic and original roots from way back in 1992. And then on a narrative front, create something that's truly fucking interesting, and I think stands up in the face of many other games that we've played today that are a more story-based experience. But what truly stands out about Wolfenstein: The New Order is not any of that, but the fact that it was able to take a stand, take a risk, and make a single-player only first-person shooter in today's day and age. No multiplayer, no co-op, just a story that stood up by itself and for you, the player, to experience on your own time at your own pace. That to me is the standout of Wolfenstein: The New Order and the Wolfenstein series reboot as a whole. The focus on world building, character development, and marrying it with solid shooter mechanics really brought the series forward while also sticking to the roots that it had set prior to this game. Now, before we get into the world and the narrative of The New Order, let's take a look at how it plays as a shooter itself. When looking at the gameplay and shooting mechanics of Wolfenstein: The New Order, it could best be described as a marriage of old and new when it comes to the shooter genre. First, let's look at the old school mechanics. Even with games like Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and Quake, everything is a pickup. Ammo, health, armor, all the pickups require a button press to acquire. Harkening back to how shooters were, this is definitely a throwback mechanic that threw me at first blush. I've gotten so used to just running over guns on the ground to scoop up the ammo and items to give shield and health that for the first hour or so, I died a shit ton, either due to the no health issue, the no ammo issue, because I wasn't just mashing button presses. In this playthrough, I knew it was coming, but this choice did confuse me a little bit. Shooters such as Halo, Call of Duty, and Battlefield have stripped away the picking up anything in game to focus just purely on the action, smoothing out the experience to its purest essence of action and shooting. While I'm glad that we have evolved past this, there is a sense of nostalgia in the New Order of having to search for resources in between or even during fights, to not have to go back to the checkpoint because, you know, dead. I have to say, it does make the fights a little bit more interesting, especially when you're low on ammo or health. And unfortunately, there's no resources around you, while a continuous stream of Nazis attempt to bum rush you in order to, cement your impending death. This also forces the player to fully utilize their arsenal at your disposal, forcing weapon swaps due to lack of ammunition and not being able to find anything. There's a lot of weapons in this game I never would have tried, especially the Lasercraft Vic, which we'll talk about in a little bit. A gun kind of sucks in my opinion, but when you have no ammo, you have to use what you have. Speaking of health and armor, yeah, you need to pick those up too. Unlike current shooters, you actually need to pay attention to your health and armor as they don't fully regenerate on their own, much like the shooters of old before Halo. Combat Evolved cemented this into the lexicon of shooters today. The New Order does have a little bit of a grace period, with your health always rounding up to the nearest 20 after staying out of combat for a little bit, but all in all, you don't replenish anything and you need to find them or else you'll be sitting at 20 health for the entire rest of the level. There's also the mechanic from old school shooters known as overcharge. Essentially, you push your health pool past the cap of 100 all the way to 200. However, in this mode, your health will slowly deplete over time, going back down to the max of 100. This can really help in a pinch though, as if you know you're about to face a bunch of massive enemies and you want to push the fight, you can overcharge your health. You can take more damage before needing to retreat, letting you get off that last magazine to hopefully finish the fight before the damage ekes into your regular health pool. This is a give and take though, as you need to consume meta items in the area to do this, meaning they won't be there or when you actually need them to get your health back to the cap of 100. So when looking to overcharge, it's always important to pay attention to what's around you, or you could easily fuck yourself in the long haul. Meanwhile, the resource of armor acts as damage mitigation, leaving this to be super important as well to the whole staying alive thing. Collecting helmets, vests, metal pieces off of the super soldiers net you armor, so hitting headshots, finding them in the world, and killing the big boys all net you a positive as well in order to stay alive just that little bit longer. In the gameplay, we need to talk about probably the most important thing in any shooter, the weapons and the shooting in Wolfenstein. The guns in this game are based off of Nazi weapons in World War II, but futurized, and honestly feel really good to shoot. Every weapon feels chunky and brutal with the sound of the piston hitting the bullet, which is firing from this steel-clad chamber. And you can hear and feel the punch of every round leaving the barrel of the weapon. From the pistol to the machine gun and the shotgun, each one of these serve a role in the sandbox as well. Your pistol is equipped with a silencer for sneaking your way, assassinating every Nazi in front of you. Your machine gun is exactly what you think it is, a primary Nazi killing machine. You obtain the shotgun when taking over the submarine about halfway through the game, inherently telling the player to use this in close quarters combat. Each weapon is also equipped with a secondary function as well. The marksman rifle turns into a laser weapon. The shotgun has pellet rounds that bounce, shredding unarmored Nazis. This is an awesome mechanic as it takes your existing arsenal and adds further utility to it, basically doubling the weapon utility and giving you that much more ability to murder as many Nazis as humanly possible. Every weapon is also able to be dual wielded as well, one gun in each hand, trading accuracy and reload time for twice the amount of ammunition to be thrown at your enemies and killing them hopefully twice as fast. This is great for the larger enemies like the super soldiers, as they are easier to hit and require more ammo to be spent to kill them, such as like the dudes with the massive metal suits. You have grenades and throwing knives, but the most unique weapon in the New Order is the Lasercraft, or the laser cutter. Killer. The weapon runs off battery and not only melts armor off of Nazis, but is also used for traversal and level as well, cutting through fences, opening metal crates, and getting into air ducts. It honestly feels like the answer to the gravity gun in Half-Life 2, where it's more of a utility weapon to get your way through the levels, finding more resources and collectibles as well. Each weapon, minus the marksman rifle, is all iron sights, as the Nazis, I guess, didn't have red dots in 1962, but each weapon picture is clear and usable, minus the silenced pistol. Normally I hate iron sights in games, but these hit just right for me for some reason. With the pistol, the silencer does get in the way of the iron sights, making it a little tough to gauge in a quick shot. Overall, the weapons and the shooting in Wolfenstein is crisp, fun, and most of all, beefy. I do wish that there was a little bit more feedback when hitting your target, but with the feedback of these weapons alone, it's hard to complain about some solid shooting mechanics that Machine Games provides in the New Order. What really stands out when playing the New Order is the moment-to-moment gameplay loop. The options given to how to tackle an encounter are varied and equally viable. The stealth in this game feels surprisingly good and forgiving, which in a first-person shooter where your field of view and the amount of vision that you have is limited to, the 180 degrees in front of you, and with that feels very forgiving. When it comes to Nazi murder and stealth, you have a few options to your advantage. You have the silent takedown from behind, you have the silenced pistol, which works wonders for clearing an area and taking out field commanders from afar, as well as having the throwing knife, which it basically acts as a pistol but a lot fucking cooler. This is important as if they spot you, they will sound the alarm, sending a string of never-ending zombies to come and kill you until you end that commander's life. However, if you want to go in guns blazing, dual-wielding machine guns and murdering everybody in your way, this is also perfectly viable and oftentimes a lot faster and can be a lot more fun. Just push the commander, end his life, murder the rest. If you want to go pure stealth and don't want to kill anyone, you could do that too in most scenarios. The amount of ways to tackle the objective is refreshing and fun and makes this game feel super replayable, along with getting tons of collectibles in the game as well. There are a lot of reasons to come back needed in a single player only first-person shooter game. The enemy variety in Wolfenstein The New Order is diverse as well. You have the shotgun boys, the rocket launcher boys, the cannon fodder boys, you have dogs to kill, you have heavy boys, heavier boys, flying boys. There's a lot of boys to murder in Wolfenstein. Having this variety of enemies keeps the sandbox fresh, and the way that they pace it and trickle these guys out to you literally all the way throughout the game is awesome and really makes it feel like you're ramping up to just killing the biggest guys as possible by the end of the game. I personally took a stealth approach for most of this game, but there's often times that I just wanted to whip out the two shotguns and blow the whole corridor away. The pacing of this game is awesome and the moment to moment is a fucking blast. And by the end, you're left with a nice warm fuzzy taste in your mouth of having a damn good time in Wolfenstein The New Order. Before we hop into the narrative, we need to talk about the musical soundtrack of Wolfenstein The New Order as well. You may know Mick Gordon from being the creator of the 2016 Doom soundtrack, but did you know he's also responsible for the music in Wolfenstein Reboot series as well? He's really been making a name for himself in video games recently, with Wolfenstein The New Order being the first game I really know him from, and it truly doesn't disappoint. The soundtrack goes predominantly between two styles, the hard guitar riffs and percussion during the large action scenes, and something I can only describe as a Quentin Tarantino flick or a Guy Ritchie soundtrack. The air of mystery and mischief while BJ and the Resistance are planning their next mission to stick it to the Nazis.
Feet and silent breath. Refuge from the storm.
The way the soundtrack conveys the tone of either what is currently happening or the build-up for what is going to happen is astonishingly good, with every track having a great ramp-up into the action, leading to the core hard-hitting aspect of the actual musical piece. The amount of distortion and electronic beats behind the track really give this unsettling aspect of seeing the Nazis in control of everything. When the tone gets serious, however, the acoustic tracks, feeling sad, lost, or lonely comes into play, really conveying the severity of the moment. Mick Gordon is easily one of my absolute favorite composers in gaming right now, who has a very distinct style behind him on each game he has been working on. It's a shame of his falling out with it on the last Doom game, but for this game the soundtrack absolutely slaps and works well with bringing the extra oomph to the narrative. Speaking of narrative, I think it's time we get into the world and story of Wolfenstein The New Order and what sets this game out from other FPS games out there today.
Knowledge stacked high, magnificent inventions, things that to you will seem like magic.
The year is 1946, and you start the game on a plane invading Germany in World War II as B.J. Blazkowicz. If you know your history, you know that this is an alternative history piece where the Allies didn't cross the Rhine, we never dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, and the Nazis are still very much in power. In fact, even winning the war. I have to say here, I'm an absolute sucker for alternative history games done well, and Wolfenstein: The New Order introduces it brilliantly. However, the opening prologue section of this game absolutely sucks. I hate being that guy that says, you know, play for the first hour, get through the first hour, and then the game will get good. But in Wolfenstein: The New Order, it is most definitely the case. I pray that if you play this, make it past the prologue and then make your decisions on whether to keep playing or not. This entire plane sequence, which is just a glorified tutorial, is absolutely boring, really repetitive, and honestly kind of dumb. And you do mechanics you don't even do in the rest of the game when it comes to the gun battery on the plane itself. But let's get back to it. BJ is on the way to Death's Head compound to kill him and try to put an end to the Nazi war machine, with Death's Head being the main R&D scientist in general behind the Nazi tech expansion. From the robot dogs to futuristic soldiers powered by Tesla coils, mutated super soldiers, and how advanced the Nazi planes are, you can see why they're actually winning this war. You were introduced to two other main characters as well. Who's the pilot in your plane and is part of the RAF, and a competent leader having been in the war since the beginning, and Private Wyatt, still green as a military man and inexperienced. BJ and his unit who survived the invasion and subsequent plane crash. And you push on to invade the giant Nazi castle, only to be captured by Death's Head himself, where you're forced to choose who you will experiment on. This singular choice actually branches on how certain aspects of the story will play out and the characters that will surround BJ in the rest of the game. In this playthrough, I sacrificed Fergus, leaving me to go down the Wyatt timeline, but you can easily swap roles and have Fergus be with you later in the game. This gives replayability of at least one more playthrough, as I do think that both are worth seeing. With this, I was hoping there would be more choices like this in the game, but this is really the only one. After General Death's Head sucks the brain out of Fergus to experiment on, he leaves BJ and Wyatt alone to escape. Upon jumping out the window, BJ gets hit with a shrapnel from an explosion, lodging a piece of metal into his brain and instantly putting him in a form of a waking coma. For 14 years, he's rendered essentially an awake vegetable, sitting and being taken care of by a mental institution in Poland. The nurse there, Anya, takes care of him as well, and BJ watches as the Nazis come and take patients away for testing over and over again. It's not until the Nazis come down to shut down the clinic itself and murder the doctor and his wife and took Anya away that BJ awakes and begins his spree of Nazi killing. Blazkowicz rescues Anya and with the help of her grandparents make their way to Berlin to free the resistance. This is where one of the best sequences of the game takes place, and this is where the New Order truly shines, in its ability to slow the story down to just reach those pinnacle character development moments. What this also does is further flesh out the world, who's important in it, and why they are the way they are. BJ's in the dining car getting coffee for himself and Anya when the labor force commander, Frau Engel, and her boy toy Booby show up, asking BJ to sit down to perform a racial purity test. This small section is harrowing, as the performance of Frau Engel here is phenomenal in showing how unhinged and slightly psychotic and yet completely put together she is. She truly believes everything that she's spouting to you right here.
Ja, das werden wir bald wissen, nicht wahr? Diesmal wählen Sie das Bild, das Sie am meisten mit Abscheu erfüllt.
She reminds me a ton of Hans Landa, the Nazi officer from Inglourious Basterds, being coy and yet having a feeling like there's always an ulterior motive as well as behind everything he says. As an antagonist, Frau Engel is great, and this performance and writing should truly be commended, which is why I haven't mentioned until now, but given the fact that everybody here is a German Nazi, I truly appreciate the fact that Machine Games went above and beyond with ensuring that the German that everybody speaks in this game is overtly true to form and actually real German. I know this is like a really small critique, but like 4/5 of the entire cast of this game, including all of the enemies you kill, speak literally word perfect German. It truly actually gets that immersion into it, something that a lot of games tend to miss out on, or at least it doesn't feel nearly as real and impactful. They let Blazkowicz go and him and Anya go, and they make the sexy time in the car until they reach Berlin, where BJ decides that he's going to go into the main prison camp there and rescue the resistance fighters in the prison camp. Finds out that Wyatt, or Fergus if you pick that timeline, is captured there as well, and they lead you to basically escape and meet up with the rest of the resistance. In the base, you meet Carolina Baker, the leader of the group, who is wheelchair bound but knows her shit. Klaus, an ex-Nazi officer, turned resistance member after the Nazis killed his wife and son for his son having a disability. Max Haas, who, much like Hodor from Game of Thrones, only can say Max Haas and has this uber childlike nature about him, but also the air of there's something more behind his appearance. And Jay is here specifically for the Wyatt timeline, and you find him playing guitar, dropping acid, and not really doing much around the base. He cares a lot about his comrades though, while harboring some resentment at first for BJ for the injustices done to African Americans prior to World War II. After a small tiff, a little bit of fighting, and a good old-fashioned guitar picking and acid dropping, the two really do become quick friends, which leads to his death being far more impactful than it probably should have been. With Blazkowicz completely ingratiated in the resistance now, they've gone to go different ways of sticking it to the Nazis, from stealing advanced helicopters, sneaking into concentration camps to free a man, sabotaging the Nazi concrete from inside that they build all of their massive structures with, named Set Roth. Set Roth is a member of an organization called Dat Jüdich. I butchered that. A group dedicated to creating futuristic technologies and advancing scientific discoveries. From there, the group moved to capture a German nuclear submarine and go to the fucking moon to get the nuclear codes for the warheads on board. Upon returning to Earth, you find Frau Engel has raided your base, killing Jay and capturing Anya and everybody else, except Caroline, who is now suited with a fancy new Dachjülich supersuit, and Wyatt, who's just hiding in a corner like a baby. The three move to assault Death's Head compound and save your friends and kill General Death's Head in the process. Upon murdering a metric shit ton of Nazis, you're ambushed by Boy Toy Booby, where he drugs you only to have BJ break out of that trance and brutally execute him in front of Frau Engel on camera. This scene is harrowing in the fact of the way that you completely obliterate this poor man, all while his lover watches from a TV set, and you just feel the seething rage behind her entire look as she walks off camera to go and hunt down the man who just killed her boy toy. Anya and Set have escaped on their own, and BJ heads onward to finish the mission he started 14 years ago. Upon reaching Death's Head and having a piff for tat between the two, Death's Head takes the brain of Fergus, in my case, the man who he sucked the brain out of 14 years ago, and shoves him in a giant robot in order to forcing him to kill BJ. BJ then obviously has to forcibly kill something that's kind of talking like his old friend. While bizarre and quirky, this is something supremely fucked up that it's pretty fucking tragic. BJ dispatches the robot and subsequently Death's Head himself in a pretty fucking epic battle with tons of fire and explosions and shit, leaving BJ intestines hanging out and on the brink of death, watching his friends move to escape. We then fade to black.
Homeless. Tempest tossed.
Wolfenstein in a moment-to-moment story is good, but nothing really all that special. What makes this game stand out for me is the voice acting, character development, and world building occurring in this game. Seeing how the Nazis took over literally everything in 1960, crushing everything in their way with the advanced technologies, gives a bizarre fascination to seeing something similar and yet completely foreign. London is now just a series of giant Nazi structures erected all over the city. Knowing that America succumbed to the fate that we enacted on the Japanese in World War II, with the Nazis dropping an atomic bomb on New York City, forcing the most powerful nation to its knees, is thought-provoking and pretty fucking interesting. The futuristic and yet brutal and industrial look of the Nazi war machine is awesome. Couple that with the spy and espionage like tone set by the resistance in sneaking into Nazi-occupied areas to cause havoc and risk life and limb to gain an edge to not only survive but thrive is fun and lighthearted and also tragic at the same time. And BJ's unwavering patriotism is strangely comforting to me. He bleeds the red, white, and blue. And while he knows he's not good at many things, he knows he's good at one thing in particular: killing Nazis, and he says it a lot. During the game, there's an inner monologue with BJ reflecting on his past, his thoughts, and brooding over losing all that he cares about, and worrying about his new friends and new lover Anya. Their love story is, I don't know, kind of hit or miss. They kind of just have sex a lot, but they start caring for each other literally after they have sex once heading to Berlin. I guess when you save somebody from Nazis, that's generally maybe what happens. He's more than just a meathead though, but a meathead with feelings. Nothing he says is eloquent in words, but the tone and emotion makes the softer side of BJ begin to appear while blasting dozens of Nazis away on a bridge you completely wrecked just about 5 minutes ago. I love the tone in Wolfenstein: The New Order, as it brings this lighthearted feeling to something that's truly so dour at the same time. The world it creates and the outlandish scenarios and characters Machine Games has brought to life in this game. While the narrative itself is good, the game really stands apart in the world building it provides and builds, and especially how it's executed. I adore the idea of a standalone DLC, a full yet smaller sized game that does not require anything else to play. In 2015, just a year after the New Order was released, Machine Games announced and released its new standalone title from the Wolfenstein series, The Old Blood. But with just a year between two games, how does The Old Blood hold up and compare to the New Order? With this second video in the Wolfenstein series on this channel, let's look at how The Old Blood compares as a standalone game, judging it on its own merits as well as how it compares to its predecessor, and does it innovate at all, or is it mostly just the same experience as the New Order? If you enjoy these types of longer retrospectives on video games new and old, consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell, and let me know in the comments below what you think of Wolfenstein The Old Blood. It's fun to discuss these games, and I love even more from hearing from all of you. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive into Wolfenstein The Old Blood. With The Old Blood coming out a year after its predecessor, The New Order, most of the core gameplay and mechanics are the same between the two games. From the stealth to the dual wielding, movement in the areas, and the core loop of Wolfenstein have not changed all that much. It feels roughly the same, which, as discussed in the last video, is just a really all-around great package on a gameplay and mechanics front. If you did miss the last video, The New Order is probably one of my favorite first-person shooters in a story-based level in a long fucking time. The shooting is tight, the stealth feels good, pickups work all the same, and the movement still feels really crisp and clean. Despite a couple of new additions to the sandbox, this prequel standalone title feels virtually the same as the first game, the only difference being the time it's set in. The Old Blood is actually a prequel to the New Order, taking place in 1946 as opposed to 1960, meaning that all the tools used by BJ are the same ones that take place in the prequel section of the New Order. All the weapons feel familiar and are the same as the New Order, leaving it feeling to be a seamless transition for returning players as well as for people coming into the series at this standalone game at a much cheaper price point. A pretty smooth barrier of entry. The pistol, the machine gun, and the shotgun is all back, and now adding a marksman bolt rifle and a grenade launcher to BJ's arsenal, we're ready to get killing some fucking Nazis. There is one drastic change, however. Rather than a knife, BJ is now equipped with a pipe that not only is used for stabbing Nazis in the back while giving them tetanus at the same time, but also for traversal in the world. In The Old Blood, there are climbable rock walls all over the levels, and utilizing the pipe broken in two, BJ can now climb these walls by just breaking the pipe in half and using them as climbing anchors, stabbing them over and over into the side of the wall. I love this addition to the sandbox as it gives players yet another method and path forward in an area to sneak and gain vantage point over the Nazis, or a way to just sneak through an area entirely. It also just feels really fucking cool to use to just smash this pipe into the side of the wall and use it because you hit it with such strength to be able to climb on top of it, but I digress. The pipe is also used to pry open doors and vents, as well as giving more options to sneak your way through without having to worry about resources like with the laser Kraftwerk from the New Order. I think the pipe is brutal as hell, and I love using them to pry armor off as super soldiers, stabbing Nazi dogs in the necks, or impaling commanders right in between the shoulder blades. Given the context of the narrative, which we will get into, it feels as scrappy and brutal as the tone of the entire package as well. Given how The Old Blood released in such a short time frame, I'm not surprised that a lot of the game feels the same, but with a few new additions put in, it feel really awesome and really fit with the Wolfenstein series. I wish the pipe would be making a comeback, but alas, we have not seen its return as of yet in the series so far. I guess the future doesn't have pipes in them to kill Nazis with. While the gameplay, weapons, and mechanics all feel pretty much the same as its predecessor, The New Order, which once again feel really good, the biggest change, and in my opinion its biggest detraction, is the pacing of the game itself. Looking at The New Order, there were many moments, specifically when back at the Resistance hideout, where the action slows and the characters and story are allowed to breathe, bringing characterization and development to these parts, and just expounding the world as a whole. The Old Blood has really none of that, going from room to room of Nazis, just fucking murdering everybody in your path to get to the next room to murder more Nazis. While this is cool, it does kind of get a little bit repetitive at times. There are 4 parts where your weapon is at all stowed, and these moments are actually awesome for growing the world and lore of BJ, but they are so short it's easy to just completely forget about. And out of these moments, there's only one that really lasts more than 30 seconds. What the New Order did was slow everything down and let you, the player, marinate on everything that's occurring, or has occurred, or will occur, lets you learn more about all the characters that are enveloping your world as BJ. Whereas The Old Blood, like I said, it feels really good, but just the over and over Nazi killing without like any kind of momentary lapse to breathe really becomes, I don't know, it becomes overwhelming at times. I wish The Old Blood would have given more of these moments and bring a bit more focus into what you're doing and the story and the narrative and the characters that you're interacting with. But for the few that are there, they absolutely slap, and they're amazing moments of dialogue and interaction. But enough of that. Let's hop into the narrative, where the game really takes a left turn at Albuquerque, lean into its old past, and really put out something that was, if given more time to expound upon, really fucking good ideas. So let's hop into it.
I hope you don't mind the weight of the world on your shoulders, Agent Blazkowicz.
I've got pretty solid shoulders, Agent 1.
In Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, you once again play as William J. Blazkowicz, set in 1946 with the task of locating a secret file hidden in Castle Wolfenstein. These files contain the location of General Death's Head's compound, which, if you remember, was the very first mission that we started on in the New Order. Along with your companion, Wesley, you infiltrate the castle guised as Nazi officers and make your way to Helga von Stab's office. I think I butchered that pronunciation, who is the commander of the castle and in charge of a secret project occurring in the area. You reach her office only to be ambushed by Rudy Jaeger, the second in command of the castle and local Nazi dog trainer at the same time. Both you and Wesley are captured and thrown into prison cells awaiting experimentation. Wesley gets taken off by Rudy for torture, seeing why they're even in the castle in the first place, leaving BJ to find a way to escape and rescue his compatriot. I love the prison break sequence here, as you start with nothing but your trusty pipe, forcing BJ to rely on stealth to make his way through a bunch of Nazi super soldiers attached by these giant electrical cables. It is here the game teaches you the versatility of the pipe, being used for movement, climbing, and stabbing Nazis. As you make your way through, you begin to gather your arsenal of weapons and put BJ on a much stronger footing to deal with the obstacles in front of him. Making your way through the castle and subsequent crypts below you. There's a lot of crypts in this game, just FYI. You learn that Helga is trying to unearth some sort of weapon buried in King Otto's tomb, which is in the local area somewhere, but the Nazis don't know where. And given the crypts and graveyards you move through, it begins to become a little clear that something odd and occult and potentially evil is occurring, or else why would the Nazis even be looking for it? Upon reaching the medical wing, you find Rudy, who has been torturing Wesley this entire time. Moving to free him, you're ambushed by Rudy and his dog, drugging you and finishing Wesley off in the process. I don't know why, but I love torture scenes in video games that are just interactable. In this case, it is you being tortured by electrocution. Even though Rudy has not really been front and center so far, he still comes off as calculated and evil, from the tone he's speaking into the actions that he's actually performing on BJ, throwing the water and pulling the switch to shock the living shit out of him. I mean, it is torture. Being a badass though, BJ breaks his restraints, kills Rudy's dog Greta, and makes his final escape attempt to the town below, Paderborn. From fighting on gondolas to scaling down the mountainside using your fucking poles that you've been carrying this entire time, the vistas here are absolutely jaw-dropping in how good they look even to this day 7 years later. The variety of locations in The Old Blood is really something I truly enjoy, especially having lived over in Germany for 9 years. Being in the Alps snowboarding, it vaguely reminds me of this weird semblance of home. Upon reaching Paderborn, the town is on lockdown as the Nazis look for you. BJ makes his way to the rendezvous point where their informant Kessler is waiting for you to show up. Upon making it there, you meet with Kessler as well as this girl named Annette Krauss, who lost her family while being sent to the camps for being Jewish, as the Nazis are known to do, only to be saved and harbored by Kessler up until this point. At that moment, the Nazis find you, and BJ, always being the hero, tells the two to hide as he dispatches literally a shit ton of Nazis, as well as Rudy, who now breaks down into the bar in a giant mech suit that's supposedly undestroyable. This boss fight is surprisingly good for even most video game standards, having you blast the mech suit and ripping off armor pieces with the said pipe that we've been using this entire time to expose the Nazis' flesh hidden within. Killing Rudy, Kessler, BJ, and Annette escape to the boat to Wolfsburg, the last known location of Helga and the files BJ still hunts for. Upon reaching Wolfsburg, you find it's under heavy Nazi control, the orange glow of the town giving it this truly sinister and evil vibe. You get off the boat, Kessler letting you know that there's another informant in town, and go to the bar that she's harbored in. As you make your way through the town, you hear the soldiers discussing a crypt that's located somewhere beneath the town. Like I said, we'll go through a lot of crypts that Helga has been making them work around the clock to open. As you reach the bar, you find the second informant, Pippa, inside, telling you that Helga's in the tavern down the road and is a wine connoisseur. She also lets BJ know that if he poses as a waiter and uses the disguise, he could potentially go and serve her some wine and steal the folder he's been searching for in the process. This scene of BJ trying to steal the folder is almost on par with the Frau Engel train scene from the New Order, with Helga being as cold and calculated and discovering that BJ is not who he claims to be, no thanks to his piss-poor German.
He's a spy! Did you really think I would be impressed by your atrocious German? Now give me the folder, Franz!
During the torture and exposition dump of Helga loving maps and looking for all these evil artifacts beneath Wolfsburg and how it's hiding a deep and sinister secret while being doubted by her superior behind her, an explosion occurs from the crypt, knocking everyone off kilter and billowing green glass seeping across the town. This is the point where the Old Blood reaches back to its Wolfenstein roots and begins dealing with the occult side of the franchise, and truly what the Nazis were looking at doing per some reports from the time. The green gas covering the town brings the dead back to life, creating literal Nazi zombies, as well as bodies raining from the sky from the explosion, now having literal zombies raining from heaven. While these zombies aren't truly hard to kill, requiring only a headshot or two, they deal a ton of damage and have the ability to swarm BJ, or you the player, extremely quickly. Not only that, but in killing Nazis, they now turn into zombies as well, having to kill the same enemy twice. As Helga moves to the crypt to see what has been uncovered, Kessler calls on the radio saying him and Annette got split up and both are now in danger from the said now exposed zombies. This is the choice proposed in the Old Blood, to whether to save Annette or Kessler. This choice is not really as obvious as in the New Order, so I didn't even realize that there was even a choice occurring or to be had, and moving forward I ended up only saving Kessler just to watch Annette get turned into a zombie in the other building across the road. I still don't know how to get over to Annette, just FYI. This choice also has no further bearing on the game except some dialogue later and an achievement. I do wish that there were some more ramifications to this choice as there was in the New Order, but it also occurs so late in the game I'm not sure really what could have been done with it, but having a choice for the sake of just having one feels a little bit out of place considering what the prior game accomplished before with the life and death situation. From there, BJ hijacks a prototype mech, much like the one used in the New Order to break out of the concentration camp, and pushes through both Nazis and zombie-infested Wolfsburg now. The orange hue now thicker with the fires of war and literal death and the dead coming to life. With the fighting occurring on now 3 fronts, BJ, the Nazis, and the zombies, utter chaos proceeds your way to the crypt, now found blown open, making your way through the graveyard, tombs, and reaching the inner chambers. BJ is now once again captured by Helga because, protagonist, now summoning a monster housed deep within the innermost part of the crypt. Helga's tossed aside like a fucking rag doll, with BJ left to contend with said now summoned evil demon beast. This boss fight here really kind of fucking sucks. The tells and the attacks are just way too long and super easy to dodge, and the hardest part of this whole fight is dealing with the constant stream of Nazis coming to still fight BJ, even though there's a giant fat fucking monster sitting right over there killing them as well. All in all, it's more of an annoyance than a true fight, and kind of a disappointing end to a game that all in all was pretty solid on the action front. After dispatching the creature in the deep and finishing the half-crushed Helga, BJ proceeds, as he is known to do, to be crushed by a rock, only to be saved by the familiar face of Fergus from the New Order. That's the British pilot from the very beginning of the game. In saving BJ, we end this journey right back where the first game began, beginning with the invasion of Death's Head compound. We fade to black on this prequel adventure of BJ Blazkowicz and seamlessly transition into the New Order. So, having gone through both how the gameplay is very much the same as well as the narrative and the different kind of tone that Wolfenstein the Old Blood takes, how do I feel about this game? In playing it again, I have to say it did feel pretty good. The constant action, the unrelenting pace in the moment makes the game really fly by. However, upon writing the script and prepping this video, I do wish that there was a little something else in this game. As mentioned before, I do wish the pacing of this bout featuring BJ was a little more like the New Order, setting up the peaks and valleys of the narrative and letting just the moments in the story breathe a little bit longer. I think specifically back to the meaning of Kessler and Pippa, both in Wolfsburg and Paderborn. Even though both of these characters inevitably meet their demise, or can in the case of saving Kessler, it'd be nice to have their characters be fleshed out a little bit more, seeing as how Kessler can be saved. However, with a $20 experience or included on Game Pass if you have that subscription, it's easy to see how and why Machine Games will want to make an action-packed distilled version of a game that they created a year before. I do also appreciate the odes to the games of the past, returning to Castle Wolfenstein as well as the returning to Wolfsburg from the game Return to Castle Wolfenstein, as well as revisiting Kessler and basing Helga off of a character of the same game are an awesome callback to the series history, while also keeping it fresh for new players as well. Not having played all the games in the past, it's pretty easy to get in tune with what's going on. I also find that a series that can incorporate and acknowledge the past of said series shows the respect to the franchise, even when changing and bringing it to the modern day. While my issues with the pacing have been discussed, The Old Blood is both an awesome follow-up and potential potential, if you're new to the series, precursor to the machine games universe in this franchise, while creating a shorter and tighter action-packed experience for a much lower price point. This game is a steal at $20 in my opinion. If you're a fan of Wolfenstein, shooters, or just want to get into this series as a whole, this is an awesome spot for anybody to jump in at. And with that, we bring this video of the Old Blood to a close.
Lampate, we are out! Fire!
Yes, madam.
He's bleeding out! Go faster!
And the great warmth washing over me.
Towel!
I think the sky's on fire.
Caroline, he's dying!
Press!
He's turning! Lampate, we'll need a gurney at the hangar bay. ETA 19
Death at the gates again. Howling my name. Come on in, old buddy. Sorry I made you wait.
Sequels to movies, books, and especially video games have a fairly large burden to clear. That is, to improve on the original while also kind of making it feel similar or the same in certain ways. This is a fairly difficult task to undertake and even harder to stick the landing on, as I said before, especially in video games. Most games really end up feeling to me like either too much has changed, like from Halo 2 to Halo 1, having drastically different weapon suites and kind of movement features from game to game, or not different enough where they just feel like a retreading on the same thing over and over again, much like how a lot of people are feeling about the new God of War. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, released in 2017 by Machine Games, is almost a picture-perfect sequel in my opinion. It doesn't mean it's a perfect game by far, but what Wolfenstein 2 managed to accomplish in its about 12-hour runtime, according to me in this playthrough, is nothing short of almost a masterpiece in almost every regard. From how the gameplay feels and is improved on from the prior games in the series, to how the narrative and characters feel far more fleshed out in this game, more so than any other Wolfenstein series, and dare I say, in most games as a whole. We're going to dive into all of that in this video. So if you do enjoy long-form video essays on video games and the gaming industry as a whole, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It definitely helps with the channel, and thank you in advance for that. And for now, let's dive deep into Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Let's start as we always do on the gameplay side of this puppy. As mentioned before, I do think that a sequel to a video game, and especially if one further in the series, needs to iterate on the gameplay enough to where it still feels much like the same as the predecessor in the series, but also with fresh and new and inventive ideas that it's bringing to the table as well. It would be really bizarre if Wolfenstein 2 comes out following up on the New Order and the Old Blood, fast-moving, chunky feeling action, and all of a sudden became a weird tactical shooter a la Rainbow Six Siege or something like that. Not only does this follow-up feel just the same as it did in the first, but in many ways this game feels like a tighter, smoother, and a far better experience to play as a whole. The leans around cover feel snappy, the guns feel way more responsive, and every trigger pull feels crisp, clean, and like it was meant to happen the exact way it happened. And in doing this, while keeping all the weapons feeling like the big, chonky, metal welded pieces of shit Nazi weaponry that they are, but yet somehow still technologically advanced, is absolutely awesome. To be honest, the gunplay feels just like a far more improved version of the New Colossus and the Old Blood in and of itself. The stealth has been vastly improved as well. You have a general direction of where the commanders are with the arrow at the top of the radio range meter, and the window you have to kill Nazis when spotted feels a little bit more forgiving than it did in the first two games. The cone of vision also feels a little bit shorter as well, so stealthing across a big open area feels a bit easier as well, giving you the player the feeling that you can actually feasibly stealth your way through this entire game. The biggest change that is noticeable right away are how pickups for ammo, health, and armor work. You can still mash the pickup button everywhere you go, and you'll be much rewarded for this endeavor. However, it feels like when you're running low on ammunition that you can just now automatically pick it up as you run over the weapon, and up to a certain threshold it's the same thing with health and armor as well. I love this small change as it makes it feel purposeful to go into overdrive health and without wasting all the health packs by accident in the area. The automatic pickups to half health feels great as well, as it lets you unknowingly stay in the fight for a little bit longer to kill more and more Nazis. It's the same thing with armor as well, just to kind of keep you in that fight a little bit longer. But after the fight, you still need to go and grab all of your health packs, all of your ammo crates, and armor pickups to stock up for the next fight. This marriage between the new and the old systems at play and meeting somewhere in the middle really has a really great feeling to it and makes it feel like that you're not having to button mash in order to just stay ahead of the curve, but you also still need to make sure that you're doing that to top up all of your reserves for the next fight. It treads a good balance, which honestly I truly appreciate. Speaking of weapons, we do have some new additions to the roster as well as some old favorites. The machine gun, shotgun, and pistol are all back, the bread and butter of Wolfenstein. Gone is the laser Kraftwerk, this time being replaced with the Diesel Kraftwerk, a type of sticky grenade launcher that shoots globs of diesel into objects and enemies to await detonation, essentially laying explosive landmines everywhere, or triggered exploding sticky grenades from Halo. On the utility front, it's used to blow open doors or explodable crates for resources and the like. However, this weapon does have a little less utility for moving about the level as the laser counterpart did, but I love the way this gun shoots, and it's far more versatile for killing Nazis as well. Setting traps, sticking huge armored dudes with tons of these diesel blobs and popping them is just a good fucking time, and causing chaos with explosions is fantastic as well. The other weapons added was the machine gun pistol, which acts as like a submachine gun, firing a ton of small caliber rounds out to kill somebody at a very fast rate. This gun does confound me a little bit for a few reasons, and in the sandbox really sits in a weird space. While it's fun to shoot the weapon in this game and just dumping rounds downrange, it sits in a weird spot utility wise, as there's already two guns, the pistol and the machine gun, that do everything this gun does but better. The only positive I can really find is if you need a gun that has ammunition in it, that this is obviously a plus, but the high capacity magazine in this weapon really just lets you, like I said before, just spray tons of ammo downrange. Also the ability to be silenced as well, so if you run out of pistol ammo, this is definitely an alternative for you to use. And speaking of upgrading, every weapon in Wolfenstein 2 has the ability to be upgraded by finding weapon kits around the world. Remember back to a new Colossus where every weapon basically just had a secondary fire mode, giving the weapon further utility to just kill more Nazis with. The upgrade system not only gives you the alt fire ability, but increases the ability and stats of this weapon as well. The pistol's main function once again is being upgraded to become silenced, but also it can be upgraded with a high caliber magazine, which allows you to do more damage and kill instantly with headshots on most Nazis. My personal favorite and most versatile weapon that you do get though is still the machine gun, where its upgrade is basically a scope upgrade that turns the rifle into a DMR style weapon, adding with further armor piercing upgrades as well as an extended juggle mag for way faster reload times. This weapon was my absolute bread and butter to go to whenever shit popped off, and works in so many scenarios. If you need to take out some guys from super far away, this works. Killing armored dudes, just swap to the fucking high-powered armor-piercing ammunition and you could just blow through the super soldiers like there's no tomorrow. Whenever shit got real, or if it got even realer and I had to dual wield it, these were my go-to weapons for most of these scenarios. Even your grenades can be upgraded, making them cause laser damage, higher explosions, and the like. Your normal skills can also be improved as well by completing challenges like getting headshots, stealth kills, killing commanders without them noticing, so on and so forth, making BJ stronger in smaller increments. These challenges are things that you just normally do in the game, but if you want to min-max your abilities, it's definitely worth paying attention to what's being close to being finished and what's even closer to being capped off entirely. About halfway through the game as well, you gain access to utility contraptions as well. The battle walkers that raise you high in the air and get above the battlefield for either just movement or raining hell on the Nazis below you. Then you have the ramshackles, which turns BJ into a human battering ram, smashing through walls and enemies the like, and the constrictor vest, which lets you crawl into small spaces like under cars and small ducts to sneak around the level to get the drop on your opponent. You start with only the ability to choose one of these items, and as you go through the world, you locate the other two just naturally, making BJ a mobility machine. All these items change how levels are tackled and approached, and all of them are super fun to use. My first choice, like I said, is always the battle walkers, as it does make half of the levels kind of busted in a way and easy to run through and murk commanders before moving on. But all of these items are equally viable, which really makes for replay value in certain areas. I love how Machine Games found a way to create new interactions not only on the battlefield itself, but in the movement of the levels as well. And somehow this is explained in the story and the lore as well. Giving more freedom to players on how they want to tackle an area is a major plus in my book. Like I said, it leads to more replayability in almost every level if you want to tackle in a different scenario. These, in my opinion, are fantastic additions to the series, and I really do hope that something more like this is in the final game of the trilogy whenever we see it. Speaking of level design, we need to talk about the levels crafted by Machine Games, and the TLDR of this, they're fucking awesome. Each space you explore in Wolfenstein 2 is large, intricate, with a ton of ways to approach an objective, utilizing said contraptions above. With these more open spaces, Machine Games has also put the ability to go back into areas in the Wolfenstein as well, having assassination targets located in each area, as well as a ton of upgrades and collectibles scattered throughout for you to find. Not only do these provide some tangible upgrades for weapons, but also the lore in this game is fan-fucking-tastic. Just reading through how Nazi-fueled America has basically existed up until this point is truly riveting, especially if somebody who enjoys history like I do. Revisiting these locations with more powerful weapons, and especially the contraptions contraptions is a damn good time, as you have more options on how to move through the level, whether it be to just jump to the second floor of areas and bash through walls at the same time. It really makes for just how you want to tackle everything just different. The design of the world in these levels are really fleshed out in this sequel, and this game is far better for it. Think back to A New Order or Old Blood, where a lot of it was just hallways or big square rooms with just different ways of going through the square to lead you to another hallway. Looking specifically at the main hideout as well of the game, the submarine from the first game, which you took over then, this space truly feels lived in and thriving. There's people everywhere, signs posted on who lives what, and each space of the character feels like a little bit slice of that character itself. Max Haas's room being full of crayon drawings and toys scattered throughout the room. Wyatt's room being full of old army posters from when he recruited into the US Army back in the day. There's also a pig, for God's sake, and he's a good pig.
Hey, Max, why you look so glum?
There's a shooting range to hone your skills and top the scoreboard for the hell of it, or if you want to get those achievements. I love this subspace, and I can't wait to see what they use for the third game, seeing as how the game ends and you get an even bigger space to utilize. Coupled with the amount of music Mick Gordon produces staggering, and all of it is awesome. There's not much too more to expand on that we haven't touched on already in any Mick Gordon soundtrack, but it absolutely rocks and fits the mood the entire way through. Even the crazy jazz solo part in the middle of New Orleans drinking contest. There really is no part in the soundtrack that sucks anywhere. As mentioned before, there's a quite bit more side content here, and I'll say it's a solid first attempt. You're given some side missions around the submarine, like feeding your pig because he's a good pig, destroying some tapes or some tablets, but the core of the side content revolves around assassination missions taking place throughout the world. As you play through the game and kill commanders as you just go throughout the levels, they drop what's called Enigma cards to grab. These are decoder cards, and as you grab more and more of them, you have the ability to basically decode the locations of Nazi commanders hidden throughout the world. This is a pretty simple hacking minigame of match the picture and unlock the location of the Uber Commando. Once unlocked, BJ goes to take him out in the true style of terribility. These detours are pretty fun at first, but towards the end there's just so fucking many of them, and doing the same thing over and over again, it does get pretty one note and tiresome pretty quick. Granted, you can go and re-explore these old areas for collectibles and upgrades, but there really could have been something more to mix it up. A fetch quest, intel gathering, planting bombs, holding points. The same assassination formula over and over again got pretty one note and wrote at a point, but for a first crack it was kind of okay. As mentioned before, it's fun to go and re-explore the areas for missing items, but I could have just used a little bit more in the side content department. But with all the gameplay and side stuff focus out of the way, it's time to move on to what really counts in a machine games game, the narrative, and the true reason to play the new Colossus. If you appreciate a good story with insane moments and impeccable character building, well, you're in the right place, my friend, as I'm not 1000% sure of a game before or after that had the most insane spectacles as this game does. Everything in this story is dripping with style and tension, with moments that literally keep you guessing about what's going to happen next the entire way. But enough of the precursor of that, let's get on with it.
Mr. Redfield. No!
As a disclaimer, and I want to get this out of the way, this next section is going to be diving deep into spoiler territory of the new Colossus. It is like 5 years old, so if you haven't played it, I would recommend doing that, but also, finish the video if you want. I feel the need to let you guys know, too, that there's going to be some pretty gruesome acts of violence coming up here in the story, as well as a lot of talk of race and some boobies and a bunch of other stuff that, is really for a mature audience. So if you're younger, you've been warned, or if you don't like gratuitous violence or boobs, or anything like that, definitely go and click somewhere else, but thank you for watching. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get on with it. Our story begins right where the New Order leaves off. BJ accepting his fate of death to free the people he loves. But the people he loves won't have it, and you see Seth, Anya, and Wyatt and Caroline flying up to evac BJ to get him back to the sub, guts hanging out and all. While slipping in and out of a coma, you see snippets of Seth working on you, Anya caring for you and telling you that she's pregnant with twins, much like the prior game that we saw before when he was saddled up in the mental institution. We also get set pieces of BJ's past life with an abusive father, protective mother, the killing of your dog, which the scene's fucking atrocious, to reflect on why BJ is just so guarded in life, why he is the way he is. You then awake with the sound of Nazis rolling into the submarine, alarms blaring and gunshots ringing out. Either being paralyzed or having a severe case of muscle atrophy, BJ grabs the nearest wheelchair as his legs don't seem to work too good, and proceeds to the Nazi killing he is so well known for. Something is different though, as BJ is reflecting on his life, how he's dying and gonna leave behind Anya and his future children because Anya is in fact pregnant. Rolling through the submarine, a broken man searching for his friends, who finds Seth, who is amazed you're even up, and leads the way to finding Anya. Finding everyone, you find out Frau Engel has been hunting BJ this entire time he's been in a coma. having finally found him and grabbed their submarine out of the water with his giant airship to flush out the infamous Terror Billy. Having already captured Wyatt and Caroline, BJ gets himself captured in order to save his friends. Having captured the infamous Terror Billy and company, Frau Engel comes down with her daughter Sigrun, a pleasantly plump German girl who doesn't seem to be a very good Nazi per Frau Engel, who's constantly berating her at this rate. Having ensured her daughter feels like a complete shit about herself, she moves to the people who she despises in front of her. To make a point, Engel completely decapitates Caroline's head from her body, taunting Wyatt, BJ, and her daughter all the same by waving a decapitated heads in front of everybody's face, imitating the action of kissing with said severed head.
Were these eyes ever filled with a lover's gaze? See things? Kiss, kiss, kiss.
Sigrun snaps and attacks her mother, allowing Wyatt the chance to get free, and allows BJ to hop into Caroline's power suit, which she was using in the first game, and the three in tow detach the U-boat and escape the Nazis' clutches. You learn that there's a stowaway of Nazis on board the sub, which BJ has to then naturally go and dispense post-haste. This is the beginning of BJ's fall into depression, losing his will to live, which is reflected in the game by only having 50 health at the start. Having lost his legs, having kidney failure, having lost many organs in order to keep him alive, and needing this power suit to keep going, and now seeing his best friend and leader decapitated in front of him. I think this is enough for anybody to lose their will to live. BJ struggles with this, however, learning him and Anya are having twins on the way and not wanting to leave them in a world full of Nazis and constant fighting and hiding. Not wanting to be a burden, BJ keeps all this angst inside, leaving BJ as a stark contrast to the gung-ho Nazi killing machine from the first game.
Hey, why won't you at least try?
Because I'm fucking dying. The longer we keep pretending it won't happen, the harder it's gonna be. I'll be in the ground a week from now.
You don't know that! What, you can see the future now? Don't act like you know things you can't possibly know!
I love to see the dichotomy of his character now, and it really works in making me feel something. All the brooding and quiet talking actually serves a purpose now. This is also a great way to feed into other characters, watching the struggle between Anya and BJ, with Anya knowing something is wrong, and Sigrun being castigated as nothing more than a Nazi by her now saviors and her mom at the same time. Wyatt and his drug-induced spiral from losing their leader Caroline, Bombate and Max arguing over eating or feeding the pig. Every character has a true arc of conflict and growth, and is well written in this regard. There's also a cat monkey thing that reminds me of that Puppy Monkey Baby commercial from the Super Bowl.
Puppy Monkey Baby, Puppy Monkey Baby, Puppy Monkey Baby, Puppy Monkey Baby.
A few years ago that set made that's just kind of fucking weird, but I'm all here for it, boys. Anyway, back to the story. In looking through Caroline's office, you learn of the American resistance in New York City. In order to spur on an uprising in the United States, you and your team decide to go and find the resistance and get them to join your group. New York, as we recall, was hit with an atomic bomb back in 1946 in order to end the war, leaving BJ suited up in the power suit he is now using from his former, now headless leader, being the only one who's able to actually go in there and not die of nuclear radiation poisoning. Climbing the Empire State Building, BJ locates Grace Walker, Abby, this baby, and Super Spesh, a lawyer now turned conspiracy theorist and who is in complete adoration of Grace. I also kind of think that that's his baby too, but don't quote me on that. After being invaded by a bunch of Nazis and BJ dispatching them while everybody else escapes, he gives this rousing speech on the helicopter about his tank is running empty and trying to make his mark and get America fighting again and get that fighting spirit Americans are known for.
Learn that the hard way.
I don't know. But I know this. You take freedom away from the American people, you're playing with fire. And I intend to pour some gasoline. People gotta know they don't have to take this shit no more. And if nothing else, that's what I'm gonna do before I go.
See, that's what I'm talking about, Blazkowicz! You wanna strike fear in the Nazis? You wanna hit them hard for all to see? You wanna cause some real motherfucking havoc? Well, then you come to the right woman. So if you still got some Nazi fighting, killing skills up in you, then guess what? I got a plan that's gonna send shockwaves throughout the nation.
Oh, shit. Is this the one where I go home to Roswell's?
Grace is hesitant at first, but she signs on, letting him know that the southern states have now defected to the Nazis and are being controlled by the Ku Klux Klan. BJ says fuck him and let's get started. Grace hatches a plan to grab a nuclear warhead from inside the submarine and use it to take out the Nazi Uber Command, which is converging over Roswell, New Mexico, and Spesh heads there first to gather intel and line some things up. This should really put a fucking dent in the Nazis' game plan and leadership, is the thought process here. After securing said warhead, you make your way to New Mexico and with a strangely horrifying sight. It's a pristine small town Americana, however, with the KKK walking around like they own the joint, Nazi propaganda littering the streets, and hearing that Americans are forced to learn German and are okay with it and give respect to the order of the Reich is absolutely, strangely, once again, a staunch dichotomy from what we know America as, especially in the 1960s. This area is one of my favorites as it shows the real clashing of ideals at play, with the evil of the Nazism control combined with the small town Americana overlay, so it's kind of a fun contrast. You also see the entire town plastered with wanted signs for you, BJ's head, the infamous Terror Billy. You'll keep hearing this a lot, so I'm going to keep saying it a lot.
That Wayne, nothing wrong with that jam? I like your style, Americans. Very good. You're part of the Reich now, subject of the great Führer. I hope for your sake you consider the Reich and all its glorious people your own. Yes, of course, sir. Sure. Let me give you some free advice. You are witnessing a new dawn for America. You have a choice in this new world, because the time will come when, how do you say, the wheat detaches from the chaff. Have you taken your German lessons? Oh, yes, sir. Good. You, how do you say thank you in German?
Oh, of course, sir. Let me see. It's,
Yes?
Dank.
Yes, out with it.
Danky.
My God. Was that all right? No, that was terrible. You're butchering my beautiful language. It's Danke schön, verdammt. Say it.
Danke schön?
Incorrect. Danke schön.
Danke schön?
I've heard enough. No more.
I'm so sorry, sir. I'm still practicing.
You will practice hard.
Oh, I will, sir, and I am so sorry.
After sneaking your way through Roswell, you go to the diner where you meet Super Spesh, having a scene that literally feels cribbed from Inglourious Bastards of a Nazi officer coming in for a milkshake to only be met with the death of the hands by BJ and Spesh as soon as he realizes who BJ actually is.
Hello?
Come on, Peter, let's go someplace else.
But Mom, we
No
have any
buts.
Oh. Bitte schön.
Danke.
Good day, man. You, one strawberry milkshake, please. Oh, I hope you don't have a fire back there to put out. If so, I'll come back another time.
I'm sure the fire can wait, Commandant. One strawberry milkshake coming right up.
Fireman, I recognize your face. Very Aryan face it is too. Are you out of Station 1?
There you come, Commandant.
Oh, vielen Dank. Now you, show me your identification papers. Please. I love strawberry milkshake. It's perhaps my favorite American thing. So simple. It's just milk and ice cream. The rest of the menu, however, I think you will need to address. I think it needs to be more German. Yes? Tell me, are you from here, John Smith? Huh? I read here that you operate out of Station 6. What is the location of Station 6? I'm unfamiliar with this station.
You go behind the bar and make your way into this tunnel that's under the diner built by Spesh's dad that leads directly underneath the Uber Command building where BJ is meant to set off the nuke. We gotta take a second and talk about Super Spesh for a minute as well, as he's just a fucking amazing character. With the lengths he goes to believe in the Roswell conspiracy, but shows even in all that his true love for Grace, America, and his complete admiration of BJ. He raves like a lunatic, but could there actually be truth into any of it? Well, yes, the alien tech is actually a .utic cache, which we know from the last game, discovered by the Americans and taken by the Nazis. BJ sneaks in, plants the nuke, and escapes on a one-wheeler as Roswell, New Mexico goes up in a mushroom cloud of destruction, taking the base and watching the Uber command ships attempting to evacuate, only to be met with their demise later in said assassination missions that we'll get to in the side content. During the escape, you see a sign from Mesquite, Texas, BJ's hometown, leading to a detour to his childhood home. On the drive, BJ recalls his mother telling him of a family heirloom, a ring that she wants him to give his future wife. Giving his love and commitment to Anya, BJ goes back to his home that he ran away from all those years ago to join the army, to relive his past with his father being a monstrous piece of shit. Flashbacks of BJ spending his days with a small local African-American girl, having fun and teaching BJ some compassion and caring for other humans, a bright spot in the world where his dad was an out-and-out fucking racist, failing his own business that his wife's father basically gave to him and funded, beating his family, and killing his dog. And let me tell you, there is no more heinous act than dog beating and dog killing. Except Nazi dogs. They fucking suck. Showing how BJ grew up in such a torturous home really gives the dichotomy of how BJ thinks of his own family, where his dad gave no shit about him, his mom, or anything else around him. And while BJ's children aren't even born yet, he has an undying love for them and Anya, and he would sacrifice life and limb, literally, to keep them safe. As you explore the house, you find your father sitting in the corner with a shotgun pointed at the door. His father, never changing, gives BJ a rasp of shit for being a Nazi killer, accusing him of being broken beyond repair and how the Nazis had given him everything. He also let loose that he had turned in BJ's mom for being Jewish, and telling BJ he is turning him in as well. BJ notices the open phone line and swiftly moving to slowly murder his father, who had tortured him for so long. In the struggle, BJ mutters the line, "Even if I was dead, I would be a better father than you ever were," and then proceeds to kill his dad. Immediately, the house begins to explode with a giant Nazi mech grabbing the house with giant claws, and BJ is captured once again by Frau Engel. I love this scene as BJ is really confronting his own past here, showing he's grown past his childhood, how he's grown out of the shadow of his father, kicking literally and beating him down in order to potentially be nothing. BJ's overcome every obstacle in his path of killing Nazis, and now he's come to overcome one that has plagued him for years. I adore this scene, and it really gives BJ some more of that character and that deep look into his past that really make BJ who he is. It is here that we move into one of the best scenes in video games. BJ awakes to the sound of Special's voice, putting on his lawyer persona as he proceeds with his escape plan with the infamous line of, "It was space aliens, man!"
It was space aliens, man!
Is promptly shot in the back of the head. BJ passes out again to awake on trial by the Nazis, where he has a vision of breaking out. This is just a vision, however, and upon passing out again, BJ is now up for execution, where our main character is promptly beheaded by Frau Engel with a giant sword on the Lincoln Memorial. We watch BJ's head fall into the water below, only to have the footage rewound to see his friends execute a ruse of snatching the head and working to shove it in a jar full of water to keep the brain alive. It is here that the now severed head of BJ is placed in a jar to be grafted on the body of a Nazi super soldier who, coincidentally, doesn't have a head, much like the puppy monkey baby thing we saw earlier in the game. From here, BJ's head is grafted onto an automaton body, leaving him with literal pep in his step as he is no longer contending with imminent death. I love this 10-minute section of the game where it just subverts all expectations of what's going to happen. I mean, this scene literally had me in shock and awe. How often do you see the character you played for 2.5 games get their fucking head cut off and actually die? The entire time you're expecting some sort of rescue while on your knees in front of the Lincoln Memorial in the National Mall is symbolic scene in of itself. But not only does the rescue never come until after the beheading, it then goes into the realm of absurd with the stealing of the head and grafting it onto a body. It's set up at the very start of the game as well, which is pretty fucking clever with Set's pet, but never in a million years would this have come out the way I believe that this entire thing happened. Frankly, it's fucking awesome. BJ's next goal is to find the newly located resistance members of New Orleans, and now equipped with the new contraptions we spoke of earlier in your newly formed super Nazi body, BJ braves the bayou to rescue Horton Boone, who along with Paris Jack and the rest of the group work together to escape, but not before having a smooth jazz session while having a drinking contest at the same time, killing Nazis and riding a fucking Panzerhund, the giant flamethrower robot dog we've seen in the last 2 games. Well, the robot dog is a little squishy in my opinion, able to die pretty quick if you don't like like just stay back and burn everybody in sight. It feels awesome to ride this monstrous mechanical beast through the streets of New Orleans, using its massive weapon to slay its creators. Horton and Paris Jack are okay characters too, but after the drinking scene, there really isn't that much left of these characters so far. I kind of can't wait to see how they grow in the next game, but alas, we're still waiting for that. Upon their subsequent escape, Horton tells the group that before Frau Engel used the Ausmeister ship to hunt BJ, it used to roam around the United States, putting swift ends to any American revolts against the Nazis. The group plans to steal the ship for not only their own uses, but to prevent this from happening again. But first they need the codes to deactivate the defenses of the ship, and with the Uber command moving to a base in Venus, BJ suits up to head to space once again, this time disguised as an actor who is set to play the part of BJ in an upcoming Nazi propaganda film. It is here that moment 2 occurs, and that cements this game as a classic in my book. Upon reaching the audition, BJ and 2 other actors show up to try out for the part of BJ Blazkowicz. It's kind of meta, but bear with me. We meet the director of the film, Adolf Hitler, who old and decrepit and obviously falling into dementia. I mean, he literally vomits, forgets who he is, and reverts to a state of calling his assistant director mommy over and over again. And yet being a ruthless killer at the same time, murdering the other actors who are not playing the part as he envisions. He invites BJ to play the role himself, and naturally he plays it flawlessly. Having the part of himself in hand, BJ is free to break into the Venus compound, steal the codes, and go back down to Earth. Now let's back up real quick. This Hitler scene is also like the pinnacle of storytelling, and it's fantastic and leans into what makes this franchise Reboot so fucking good. Taking what we know, shifting it a little bit, and making it so over the top and unforgettable. Hitler is now old, and not having him kill himself at the brink of defeat out in Berchtesgaden, and seeing the vision of pure evil literally regressing to being a giant old Nazi baby again is both funny and harrowing at the same time. To see this font of evil spreading his bullshit while also forgetting who he is sticks with you for a bit. I love the way Machine Games handled this entire exchange, and how he's, once again, this just ruthless fucking killer, but also he's old. He's falling into old people's state of dementia and pooping himself and farting all over the place and forgetting where he is. Also, it does set up for the inevitable Mecha Hitler reveal that in the series later at some point. Anyway, back on track. We return to the submarine to be met with a literal surprise party for BJ's 50th birthday. The crew hang loose, drink a ton, have a good time, all the while Wyatt tripping in the corner on more and more psychedelics and proceeds to disappear. You find him later underneath the shooting gallery, attempting to kill himself because of the state of depression that he's in, which with BJ and Wyatt being through so much together really brings into focus the struggle Wyatt's been dealing with silently on his own. Through seeing Fergus die, Carolyn being killed as well, and all of his buddies through the years of fighting just also coming to the tragic death by the hands of the Nazis. It's enough to send anybody into a spiral. Wyatt is truly a tragic character in this, right? And through his friendship with BJ and brotherly love they share, BJ pops him one right in the fucking kisser and takes him to set to flush the drugs out of his body, not without expressing their brotherly love in the process, leading to the grand finale. You move to take over the Ausmeister, but not before giant Nazi robots try to block your path. Working with Anya, you disable these defenses, and upon reaching the control center, you get attacked by another Panzerhund, where Anya boobies out from a burned shirt, dual wields 2 machine guns while tossing grenades to save her man's life. All doing this while super fucking preggo with their babies. It's an over-the-top scene to be sure, but one that shows the dedication both have for each other in a funny and kind of really heartwarming way.
Wow.
I think I'm done with this.
Covered in blood, tits out, and fucking giant pregnant belly, BJ reflects on how beautiful she is all at the same time. We lead up to the last scene, the entire crew rolling up on Frau Engel, giving a TV interview on how she was able to murder Terror Billy and capture him, to free the Nazi people of his reign of terror, only to be murdered by the same man on live television. We then get an amazing speech from Wyatt and Grace about how the American people need to rise up, as they once did, to form the country that we all live in now, and fade to black.
Preach. You were born in the land of the free. You fought the kings of old and broke them. You gave your lives for the simplest but most essential truth of all. Give me liberty or give me death. Right on, Wyatt. In your veins runs the blood of revolutionaries. So tonight, Brandish your guns, your knives, and your fists. Seek out your oppressors wherever they are and tell them, we don't want nothing, not a thing from you. Tonight, we show those that sow the wind that we are the whirlwind.
We're not gonna take it! To be honest, this last mission really comes up really fast, and I wish that there was a little bit more lead up to the whole ordeal, some sort of like swellingness of the end coming in sight, and leaving on this cliffhanger is just, oh, it makes me want the third one so bad. As the end just, it does kind of appear out of nowhere and the game is done, but the final scene with the Americans rising up and you see the newspaper articles of riots and revolts all over the country with the banging metal cover of "We're not gonna take it" is a fucking way to end the game, and I absolutely adore it. I have to say, in even relitigating all this through this video, I can't stop thinking of all the different moments of this game. From the beheading scene, to Hitler, to killing your dad, to having that struggle with your own past, and moving on to the future with this newly formed body. Everything in Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, on a narrative point of view, hits almost perfectly for me. Like I said in the past video, I'm a big fan of alternate history, and this one just takes it to the new level. It's also an extremely patriotic game, especially if you're an American. It's hard not to notice how pro-America that BJ especially is, and how he has this wonderful ideal, even with all the problems we have in our country, of how this country used to be. And every day BJ is fighting to recreate that America that he knows is the best country in the world, and truly is. I can't help but just see the ringing patriotism from America coming out of Machine Games, which is not from the States, it's from Sweden. So I don't know, I absolutely adore everything in this game, and it's literally a picture perfect game, and I adored playing it through once again this time around. So on a narrative point of view, I don't think you can find anything better, and you're doing yourself a disservice for not playing it yourself. But we have to come to the narrative at some point. We've been going on for about 18 minutes, so let's wrap this video up, shall we? In reaching the end of the video, I want to share some thoughts. This game is downright amazing in my opinion, and not only as a sequel but to an already good game, but a banger of a game in its own right. It does what every great sequel should: iterate the core without changing the fundamentals. From the feel of the shooting, the weapon upgrades, the ability and traversal mechanics that you are then implemented to halfway through the game are all vastly improved, and on the writing side, there's nothing but ups here as well. Machine Games really found a style in this title and leaned into it hard, while incorporating legit shock and awe moments to make this game stand out above anything else. From demented Hitler, beheadings galore, exploring the depths of American patriotism, even in the face of hardships we dealt with in this country at the time. Grace, Horton, and Spesh, rest in peace, are fantastic additions to the crew, all adding their own flair to the resistance and inner turmoil, a drug addiction of why it is tragic and entertaining at the same time. Seeing his trips with the lizard, I still think it's some of the best cinematography in games. Wolfenstein 2 beautifully treads the camp with the real emotions and tragedies like no other game I've played before, and still in one of my top 10 games of all time. I adored going back to this title, and if you haven't checked out Wolfenstein 2, you're doing yourself, as I said before, a massive disservice. Even with my wife, who casually plays games on the side, she's currently playing House Flipper right now, enjoyed the hell out of this game, and with that, we have to bring Wolfenstein 2, unfortunately, to a close. While still waiting for the finale in the trilogy, we do have one more game to look at in this series, the black sheep of this reboot series, Wolfenstein Youngblood.
Because there's no way we're going to let those assholes win.
No, there is not.
Rain is coming, girls.
The rebooted Wolfenstein series from Machine Games thus far has followed a pretty consistent cycle of releasing mainline games and then a side story game in between, taking place elsewhere in the timeline. The Old Blood was a prequel to The New Order, exploring the mission directly before the events of the first game. However, upon the release of Youngblood, the reception of this game was mixed, to say the least. But with drastic changes to the formula, narrative delivery, gameplay, and even studios developing it, why is it so middling? In this video, let's take a look at the good and the bad of Wolfenstein Youngblood and come to our own conclusions to the spin-off story. This will be the last part for now of the Wolfenstein series on this channel, so if you haven't seen those yet, go back and take a look at those videos. I'll leave a link up here in the top right somewhere. It would definitely mean a lot to me. And if you like these more long-form deep dives into games new and old, consider hitting that subscribe button. It would be very awesome of you to do this for me, and I hear it also increases your sex appeal by like 0.2%, which we all drastically need for watching video game videos on YouTube. With that out of the way, let's dive into Wolfenstein the Youngblood and see why it was so middling. Imagine for a moment you're going out to a meal. You go to Olive Garden because you're in the mood for some okay pasta and some pretty good breadsticks. As you walk in, you're met with a giant hibachi-style restaurant with a bunch of fat Japanese dudes just slicing that meat on top of that grill. I'd have to say that, you know, and the fact that you were going there for pasta and breadsticks, you'd be pretty fucking confused, if not mad. Where are the goddamn breadsticks? This is pretty much how I felt the moment I opened up Wolfenstein the Youngblood. What was once a story-focused, visceral-playing, single-player first-person shooter was now a multiplayer, co-op focused, live service shoved in thing. Hell, this game isn't even made by Machine Games, but Arcane Studios led the charge on this one, known for their games like Dishonored and Prey. Now, I'm not opposed to studios trying new things with their franchise, and hell, I'm not even opposed to different studios kind of taking the reins on said franchise. Some devs even do it better than the original. See Treyarch with Call of Duty. But what makes that different is that it still feels like a Call of Duty game. Black Ops plays the same as Modern Warfare, which plays the same as Advanced Warfare. I mean, you get the drift. The restaurant analogy works here as well. You could have many different franchises of a restaurant, but they're all owned by different owners, operating kind of doing a similar but different kind of feel. And this is where my main complaint with Youngblood comes in. This does not feel like a Wolfenstein game. This feels like a senseless product under the guise of Wolfenstein in the time where Bethesda, before being bought by Microsoft, was kind of struggling to get titles onto the market that actually sell. Prey sold soft. We all saw what happened with Fallout 76. Dishonored has never really been a high seller, and Tango Gameworks, despite making great games like The Evil Within and Evil Within 2, have never sold all that well either. I mean, really, short of Bethesda Game Studios, Bethesda games really don't sell. They're for a niche audience. All these games had a ton of praise behind it, but sales were soft, and I'm not going to begrudge Bethesda for trying something different here. But let's look into Youngblood and see just how different the two games really are. From the onset, I want to make it clear I played this game solo and not co-op at all, which I'm sure is good and may even make the game better, but I don't have friends, and so that's a moot point for me anyways. From the word go and you going into the main menu, the first option is play game as well as a message of the day. This should be the first clue that some live service bullshit has snuck into a single player franchise. You click one of the Blazkowicz sisters and loadout as well as how your character's armor looks. Another clue of some live service bullshit. And then you're met with either host or join a game. No clear way to play this single player or alone, like every other Wolfenstein game. Now, I'm not opposed to co-op, and I think that the mode can bring a lot of good to franchises, see games like Halo and Gears of War. But those games put solo players first, like Bethesda was saying at the time, and keeping the solo player experience alive. That aged poorly. Gameplay-wise falls pretty far as well. Remember all the stealth that could be used in the other Wolfenstein games, sneaking your way through to the commander of the level and level the playing field by sneaking and killing everyone running away like a ghost in the night? Good luck doing that here. That's not to say you can't, but these Nazis have fucking radars in the back of their heads, and as soon as one of their friends falls, boom, alarm, blowing all stealth and turning almost every encounter into a run and gun fest. The stealth in this game is so broken that about a third of the way through the game, I had to just say fuck it and just engage everyone loud and mercilessly, which was still kind of fun. Not only was this way less frustrating than trying to sneak my way through like every other game in the series thus far, but was beneficial to your character as well, as now there's levels to your character, as well as your enemies. This is probably the biggest change to the core gameplay of Wolfenstein, and the most contentious one in my book. This was and still is a trend in my opinion, but the creation of levels for both yourself and the enemy is one I can't stand in most titles. It holds no real value to the player, other than artificially giving you a sense of progression. Levels in Youngblood work like most games, where you get some skill points for, killing a bunch of guys and earning that experience. This is once again fine, but in every other Wolfenstein game, you gain these perks and these special abilities or these percentage boosts by actually engaging with what you're leveling. And both Wolfenstein 1 and 2, if you were dual wielding all the time, your dual wielding would improve. If you're sneaking everywhere, you become like you're stepping a little bit quieter. If you're using stealth pistols to kill commanders, your pistols start doing more damage. Every aspect that you were leveling, you were engaging with at the same time, much like Skyrim and how their leveling system works. Not only that, but giving your enemies further levels as well, and they're also leveling up as you go through the game, really just creates this artificial difficulty difficulty spike where you run into a guy with a skull and you know that you just shouldn't engage him because he's going to kill you. Looking back at every other Wolfenstein game, the enemy itself was the hard part. It wasn't artificially boosted by any sort of higher health pool, more damage output, or a random level difficulty. The shotgun guys were more armored than your standard Nazi fodder, and your super soldiers were more armored than that, but everybody still had a weakness and everybody still had a tell. Now every enemy takes just more bullets due to artificial difficulty spike as you go through the game. It was never needed and it creates just an out of character random progression system for the joy of seeing the numbers get bigger. I mean, hell, the enemies grow in level as you grow in level, so you're not even really progressing. They're just moving at the same pace you are. I really wish this trend in video games would stop, as these weird leveling systems in non-RPGs and trying to shove RPG elements into every other game known to man really gets old. Let the shooter stand on the shooter foot. If it's a quality shooter, people will play. You don't need levels to make that happen. Get rid of leveling in any other video game other than role-playing games, please. Going further into the systems, you now have an upgrade tree for both your character as well as your guns. These upgrades can be bought with coins found in the game and serve as the upgrades that you would get in the last two games. I don't really mind the system too much, other than the fact that just coins are kind of just littered throughout the world, and once again, give this weird artificial progression because these coins aren't rare. You're not finding anything special. You're just running in a circle and smashing X a bunch like you were for health and ammo back in the last two games, which you don't even do that in this one at all. The ammo and health just pick up. It also feels a little world breaking that the Blazkowicz sisters would just be buying weapon parts in Nazi occupied Paris. Either the Nazis are just letting all these weapon parts roam free in their underground, or they're just, just doesn't fit with the world very well in my book. Looking back at Wolfenstein 2, collecting those weapon kits made sense in the last game, as this just kind of feels out of place. Not to mention that there are coins literally everywhere in the world and they're not hard to come by. More upgrades unlock as you gain your artificial levels, gating you from kitting out your favorite weapon until you reach this artificial threshold we've already beaten into the ground talking about so much. There's also skins you can buy for your weapons and armor as well for coins, or if you can't be fucked with to even look around in a circle and find them, gold bars that you can purchase for real money. Youngblood falls into this weird ground of like a half live service, half not, where skins are buyable, but there's no real updates to the game. It's just kind of a confusing system of monetization. It feels pretty scummy and gross, and as I said before, it doesn't feel like Wolfenstein. None of these other games had any sort of microtransactions in them. It's a shame too, because not being part of the core numbered series, this could definitely be somebody's first time into Wolfenstein, and it could be met with just kind of a messy, not really fleshed out live service, half-baked thing. I don't know. I feel like that just on this systems front, and especially having this live service stuff, it's just not a good look. You have to remember that this game was somebody's first Wolfenstein game for sure. And if you met with this, why would they ever go back? In terms of the level design, I have to say that part is pretty fucking good. And this is where Arcane really shows what they are made of in making some really cool levels, albeit not many of them in this game. Much like their other games, there's a ton to explore and tons of lore pieces to grab and shortcuts you can unlock and as you make your way through these levels. All these areas can be revisited and feel like they connect to each other pretty well, even though you just go back to the metro tunnels and hit a menu. There's a ton of verticality in these levels as well, allowing you to get high and rain hellfire on the Nazis from above, or sneak out of their line of sight, which is the only optimal way of sneaking in this game. If you played Dishonored or Prey, you can really see how these levels kind of feel like something out of those games, minus all the immersive sim elements of grabbing everything. Part of me almost wishes they had leaned more into the immersive sim aspects of it, but instead we get this cross between a Wolfenstein game and an immersive sim with levels mixed with some live service because it's 2019 and that's what we do. I do like the reusing of these levels, going back to them time and time again, as there's actually a pretty drastic number of side quests in this game, and some of them are pretty cool, like searching for a tape in a giant tape storage facility in one of these Nazi controlled bases, or exploring a hospital to find some resistance member who's been captured and being tortured there. It's pretty varied and they're kind of cool, and they give you some pretty good rewards as well as a shit ton of coins and experience, the two systems that we have just been bitching about. If you're looking to get your character a little bit more powerful, these are definitely worth doing. I did engage with most of them until about 2/3 of the way through before I kind of just said I'm over this game and wanted to see it to its completion. So, but there's a lot of side content for you if that's what you enjoy, and I gotta say they're pretty fun too. While the moment-to-moment combat feels fine, the movement in this game really stands out to me. Most so in the double jump. I love double jumps in games almost as much as I love grappling hooks, and this one feels really good. There's a ton of control in the jump and you go pretty fucking high, making these levels, like I said before, a bit more interesting and finding your own way through to the objective. However, you do always have a companion with you, whether you're playing in co-op or you're playing by yourself. If you're playing by yourself like I did, you have an AI-controlled other sister that's accompanying you through your journey. And I've got to say, it's probably as good as you imagine. She struggles to pick you up if you go down, God forbid you lose all your health. She stands in the middle of all the incoming Nazi fire. It feels like she misses every single one of her shots. So all in all, pretty fucking bad. The game truly would be better serviced if you were playing solo and you just had no AI character to accompany you. But in doing so, it would sacrifice the story. So it is what it is, and I get it. I just wish she was better at all, or at least okay. The AI just gets in the way more than she actually helps. You also have a shared life pool, meaning you can only go down 3 times between the 2 of you before you get a game over, and she wastes almost all of them. AI companions have never been the best, but this one really sucks, and a lot of my dislike of this game really stems from that. I really hope that Machine Games takes away the fact that nobody liked this, because I don't think anybody did. At least I sure as hell didn't, and I surely don't want Anya following BJ around for the finale and killing Hitler in Wolfenstein 3. So here's hoping we don't see any more AI companions at all.
I'll wager it is.
You?
Probably out on the plains somewhere. Clear skies ahead. Wind against my skin.
From here, we need to finally get to the truly left behind aspect of Wolfenstein Youngblood, and that is the narrative. Youngblood takes place 20 years after Wolfenstein 2. The United States has liberated itself mostly from the Nazi regime. We meet BJ and Anya and their 2 daughters, Jessie and Sophia. BJ is teaching Jess how to shoot a rifle, and Anya is showing Sophia some CQC combat, obviously always training to continuously kill more Nazis. One day, BJ goes missing, and with a visit from Grace Walker from Wolfenstein 2 and her now grown daughter Abby, the 3 daughters discover a hidden room full of BJ's old war stuff, discovering he ran off to Paris in search of something and was going to go meet with the French resistance there. The girls don't think that their moms are going to do anything about it, so stealing the helicopter Grace rode in on, the girls head off to France to locate BJ and figure out what the hell he's going to France for to find. Also located in the helicopter are 2 Das Judic power suits, to which the Blazkowicz sisters suit up to do what their dad taught them how to do: kill Nazis. Upon getting to France and finding the resistance, they meet Yu, who tests their skills before helping them, sending the girls to go kill a Nazi commander on board a Zeppelin that is flying over Paris. The problem is, the girls had never killed a Nazi before. Their first kill is a pretty good cutscene, both scared shitless, clumsy, and when they finally kill their first Nazi, puke from nerves and being covered with Nazi brain matter. Up until this point, this story's been pretty okay so far. It has some of the style of Wolfenstein, with humor mixed in with this type of espionage with a hint of over-the-top violence.
You okay? I think I'm fine. Oh my god. Oh my god, I got his brains in my mouth. Water, give me water.
Unfortunately, after the girls make their first kill, the ludonarrative dissonance sets in. Keep in mind, these girls have just killed their first Nazi. We see them struggling with how they're even going to do it and clumsily kill this single man. Now, after that first kill out of the way, they are now professional killing machines, literally murdering over 9,000 Nazis in the span of this game, without a single flinch or mention of, having killed so many Nazis ever. Much like Nathan Drake, who also proceeds to kill, 1,000 Russians in the span of one adventure, but struggles when he has to kill one person. It breaks the feeling that these teenagers haven't killed before any of these events, and yet because of the gameplay, we can dual wield, fly through the air, launch ourselves at giant Nazi mechs and the like. I get why, but it just feels off. After killing said Nazi general, who also has a power suit like the girls, they head back down to Yu and the French resistance to show that they can kill fucking Nazis. Yu lets the girls know that BJ was headed to a place called Lab X, which is locked down currently in Paris somewhere, and the girls must hack the mainframe computers in the 3 security towers, also called the 3 brothers, in order to gain access. With the sisters having their mission to find their dad, and this being really the only lead, they proceed with said task. After hacking all 3 towers, Abby overhears a plot between Yu and the other mute French resistance member, discovering that there are actually Nazis in hiding, with the guy, Lothar, wanting to start the 4th Reich, and now with Lab X unlocked, thanks to the Blazkowicz sisters, plan on disposing them upon their return and begin their revolution with the weapons and research located inside that lab. Abby warns the girls, and playing into their ruse, Jews pretend to drink the drugged wine that was supposed to knock them out. A pretty dope-ass fight scene occurs here with the sisters coming out on the losing end, but Abby getting the worst of it, getting a knife jammed in her eyeball. This scene is pretty hard to watch for the grisly aspects of pulling said knife out of an eyeball, but this scene really starts to feel like Wolfenstein in this rebooted series. The girls, guided now by their now death perceptionless Abby, head to Lab X to hunt Yu, Lothar, and find their dad BJ. Upon reaching the deepest level of the labs, they run into their dad, who's been hiding out down there, still donning the American flag everywhere he sets up shop. He explains that after killing Hitler in 1960, spoilers, he kills Hitler, a sort of doomsday device was activated, where some insane Nazi technology is slowly making the world uninhabitable with crazy climate change. In his travels of Lab X, he also discovered that there's multiple dimensions of reality, having seen one where the Nazis actually lost World War II and the world was at peace. Now, it's pretty much an on-the-nose reference that is our timeline that we are currently here existing in that day, as the Nazis did, in fact, lose World War II. With this weird Das Judic artifact from Wolfenstein 2 in hand, he's able to break it into and upgrade the girls' power armor even further, giving them more abilities to stop bullets and use what I can only refer to as the Force. Ambushed by Nazis, the girls go to put an end to Lothar and Yu, killing Yu with an elevator door and having an insane boss fight on top of the tower with Lothar. The girls finish him off, but not before he tells his allies to march on Berlin to stage the coup to begin the Fourth Reich. Grace and Anya, having flown from the United States, just showing up now, and BJ go off to find their friends in order to engage the new Nazi regime now growing in the center of Germany. The girls decided to stay back in Paris, France to help the resistance continue fighting Nazis. We end credits. Now, this may be in fact the shortest narrative section I've ever done, which for a Wolfenstein game is pretty disappointing. Not to mention there's also like 4 cutscenes in this entire game, 2 at the very front and 2 at the very end. It's obvious that the writers over at Machine Games probably had not a lot of hand of this in my opinion, as it all feels pretty lackluster and not fully thought out. I literally found myself forgetting what the end goal was at about the 6 to 8 hour mark of playtime in between the beginning and end events, due to any sort of lack of cohesion of cutscenes, cool moments, or standout segments. It's obvious this game was hamstrung by the live service co-op aspect, not to mention the super short dev time in between games. The Old Blood was short like this, but it had many story moments, and that game still felt like Wolfenstein. Youngblood is like that third adjacent cousin by marriage. It has ties, but they're not really deep and definitely not even relatable to their predecessors. But most of all, I felt this story was boring. Nothing really happened. You got your one goal, you did your main goal, a small twist happens, you find your dad like you pretty much knew you were going to do, and then kill the 2 bad guys that just showed up literally about 3/4 of the way through the game. It's just, there was no real attention grabbing moments. Nothing was really, I don't know, it just didn't really hit in my opinion, because there was nothing that made me go, oh, I care about all these characters. I care about BJ and Anya because I've seen them for 2 games. I don't really care about Jess or Sophia, other than I'm supposed to care because it's their daughters. It just doesn't really work in my opinion. You need to make a character stand on their own, and this game just kind of felt like we wanted to retread some weird ground, make a side story tangent thing, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work in my opinion. This narrative was boring. It did nothing for me. Compared to every other Wolfenstein game that's really hit home, this one just feels like a complete mess.
Man, looks like we need to use those things on the side to reach the top.
In conclusion, all in all, I found Wolfenstein Youngblood a pretty lackluster experience. Between the forced co-op AI partners, a lackluster story that started with so much promise, and stilted presentation, playing this felt more like a chore to me. Compared to the other 3 games in the series thus far, where I literally could not stop playing them and I had to eventually just tell myself to go to bed, ruining any sort of hope of me playing any other game. This is by far the weakest, and I feel the most desperate try to get a game out attempt, shoving it out half-heartedly with monetization just crammed in, and this may be conjecture, didn't sell all that much and just alienated the audience of these games more and more. You don't hear this game talked about, and for good reason. I really hope Bethesda Machine Games took away the right lessons from this, I would call it an abject failure, and go back to making Wolfenstein 3 a true predecessor to the masterpiece of Wolfenstein 2. I want the Olive Garden, not a Japanese hibachi restaurant. And with that, we bring this video and the current run of the Wolfenstein series on this channel to a close. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, subscribe to the channel if you want more stuff like this, and check out whatever YouTube is recommending over here. It's probably pretty good. Until next time, my name is Brendan, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.